came here first, thought it was wrong, and then drove up there.
Well, that sort of fits the bill.
Yeah, it does.
There he is. How are you? Good, good.
Right across America, but you're lost in Northumberland County. Yeah. I lost the building.
You get lost in the building?
Well, I got lost. One year. I got lost.
How did you get lost?
Good. How are you then? Good.
Good evening. Welcome to our council session. We opened earlier this evening at 5:30 with a closed session. So I will now take you into the agenda of item number 3 and ask you to join me for a moment of reflection. Deputy Mayor, are there any additions to the agenda?
There are no additions to the agenda, Your Worship.
That is music to my ears. Moving on, disclosure of pecuniary interest of members of council. Seeing none, Mr. Larmer.
Next, Your Worship, we have the adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting.
Deputy Mayor.
Number 1 is the adoption of the February 3rd, 2020 regular council meeting minutes, and the action recommended that council adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting held on February 3rd, 2020.
Seconder, Councillor Barreau. Discussion. All in favor? Carried. Deputy Mayor.
The second item is the adoption of the February 10th, 2020 special council meeting minutes. The action recommended that council adopt the minutes of the special council meeting held on February 10th, 2020.
Seconder, Councillor Chorley. Discussion. All in favor? Carried. Mr. Larmer.
Next, Your Worship, we have presentations, and we have a presentation from the Cantastic 4, Gord Lay, Brad West, and Gord Treasurer, and Stephan, Allan, regarding the Ram race across America.
And Gord, welcome to our council chambers, and Gord, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Henderson, and thank you, councillors, for inviting us tonight and guests of council. This is the 5th time we've made this presentation, so I hope we've got it down right. Really, this is the story about an adventure we had in the summertime. It was a Race Across America, also known as RAM. And you can see in the map that our race started in California, actually Oceanside, California, and zigzagged through the country northeasterly towards into Maryland, and we finished in Annapolis. So we literally dipped our back wheels of our bikes into the Pacific, and when we finished, we dipped our front wheels in the Atlantic. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the history of RAM, talk a little bit about our course, our team, of course, our riders, and the crew. And special emphasis will be on the crew, because we did find success, and it was really attributable to the crew. We're going to talk about how we prepared for the race, our goals, our strategy, the crew roles in navigation. We were able to do some fundraising as well through this event, and how social media played a bit of a role there, and then acknowledge some of our supporters and sponsors. So this is the team. These are the 4 riders. We actually had the easy job, but introducing the riders, there's myself on the left, Steve Allan, Brad West, and Gord Treasurer, going left to right. This is really the heart of our team, are the crew members. We had 11 crew members. Tracy West and Kelly West, the wife and daughter of Brad West, one of our riders. Caitlin McCaig, she was our sports psychotherapist and navigator. Friends of ours, Mary Grace McMichael and Gord Hunter, they worked as driver and navigator. My wife Patty, she was a driver, navigator, and she was called in to be the nurse on this ride, and you'll learn about that. Sean Corbishley, which again is a bit of a family affair, that is Tracy West's brother. And then the interesting thing is we had 4 Puerto Ricans on our team, and they were really the key strategically to our success. Pedro, Francis, and William and Victor came onto the team sort of at the 10th hour. They found out that we were racing. William has done this 7 times in the past, working on teams. He contacted us through the internet and offered his services. Well, clearly we were a bit leery getting an email from someone in Puerto Rico, but he turned out to be the real deal. We flew him up to Canada. We interviewed him. It was a good experience, and I can honestly say we wouldn't have found the success unless we had this experience on our team, and it really did round out the team for us. And then finally, we had a 5th rider. He's not in this picture. His name's Chris Hurton. He's one of the strongest cyclists in Ontario, one of the most accomplished in his age group. He was there for if one of us failed in the 11th hour, he was there and available to start at the start line. The rules were that the 4 riders who crossed the start line, they all had to finish, or one of the 4 had to finish for the team to be successful. We couldn't substitute after we crossed the starting line. There we go. I'm going to hand over to Brad West, and he's going to go through the history of RAM. And while we're doing this, if we could get the video up as the background, that would be helpful.
Thanks, Gord. So, a little bit of background on RAM. A Race Across America is the world's toughest bicycle race. It's been running for 37 years, and there's no other race in the world like RAM. There's no other race that combines the distance, terrain, weather, no other event that tests a team's spirit from beginning to end. The race inspires everyone who's been a part of it, racers, crew, and fans alike. RAM is the true test of speed, endurance, strength, and camaraderie. When the race began back in 1982, it was known as the Great American Bike Race, and there were 4 solo riders participating. In 1989, team divisions were added to give riders the options of riding together or taking turns, allowing them to balance higher speeds against longer rest periods. Unlike the grand European tours, the best known of which is, of course, the Tour de France or the Giro d'Italia, those are stage races for professionals. RAM is a continual, around-the-clock race with no stops. Once the clock started in Oceanside, California, it didn't finish until we crossed the finish line in Annapolis, Maryland. RAM is 30% longer than the Tour de France. Riders can compete in solo, 2, 4, or 8-person teams. It's open to amateur and professional athletes alike. A majority of the riders actually come from outside of the U.S. In 2019, there were 25 countries represented. There were 38 solo riders, 10 2-person teams, and 9 8-person teams. In our category, there were 19 4-person teams with 9 countries represented. Starting from west to east in Oceanside, we crossed 12 states before we got to Maryland. The race is 3,000 miles or 5,000 kilometers long. There are 175,000 feet cumulatively of climbing, or 53,340 meters. The maximum elevation we reached was 11,000 feet or 3,353 meters at Wolf Creek Pass at the Great Divide in Colorado. The route crosses 3 mountain ranges, the Sierras, Rockies, and Appalachians. It also crosses America's 4 longest rivers, the Colorado, the Mississippi, the Missouri, and the Ohio. The route also passed through several iconic landmarks like the Mojave and Sonoran Deserts, Monument Valley, the Great Plains, and the Gettysburg National Military Park. Our strategy for the race was to ride in 2 pairs with only one rider on the road at a time. Each pair rode for 4 hours, alternating riders every 30 minutes so that we could ride as fast as possible. After each team's 4-hour section, we returned to the RV to sleep for 4 hours while the other team rode. We repeated this 24 hours a day continuously from coast to coast. The only time we varied from this was when we were climbing in the mountains, when we would alternate riders after every mile. We exchanged riders over 350 times throughout the race. We utilized 3 vehicles, 2 minivans and an RV. One van would follow the rider, and the other van would carry the second rider ahead to the transition point 30 minutes ahead. We had 11 support crew, as Gord mentioned, consisting of drivers, navigators for the 3 vehicles, a bike mechanic, a person to prepare food and drinks for the 4 riders, and for all of the crew. The crew worked in 16-hour shifts and had 8 hours sleep during each 24-hour period. Steve is now going to talk about training and the team's goals for the race.
What's that?
I'll do the forward, I'll move the slideshow.
Yeah, let it go. We started training approximately a year ahead of time for this. We chose 4 guys, all local guys, that we wanted to be able to train together. We were already all good friends, and we became much better friends through the process. We began training, if you look at the picture on your left, indoors throughout the winter, and we rode mornings at 6 a.m. in the morning, and we rode evenings, about averaging around 4 times a week through the winter months. And as soon as the weather got good enough to get outside, we were outside, and it was a miserable spring, but we rode through all of it. We incorporated a couple of test rides where we did one 24-hour ride under race conditions, and that was on Easter weekend. And on the May 24th weekend, we did a 36-hour ride under race conditions. Those both went extremely well. We were really happy with how the group performed. And we did run into an odd little problem here and there. That fellow on the screen, see, it's this guy. He looks better now. But he had a pretty bad accident in training. He had a concussion. And we thought we were going to not have him available for the race. That's when we came up with the idea of having an alternate. We never ended up using the alternate. Gord recovered unbelievably quickly and was back on the bike again within, I think, a week. And we were rolling again. Our team goals were, number 1, to finish safely. A number of people have died in the race. It is dangerous. There's trucks and a lot of other things that you need to be careful about. We also wanted to be careful about finishing with our friendships intact. You don't make a whole lot of friends when you're in your 50s, new guys that you really like, and you don't want to lose the ones you have. We cared also greatly about our crew, and it's dangerous for them too. So anytime they were outside of the vehicles, they were wearing warning vests, they had lights on their heads at night, and we were very careful. We made a lot of effort to try to get everybody home safely. We also wanted to finish with our friendships intact, and at the same time, we had a goal of finishing under the 9-day cutoff time. The 9-day cutoff time is what you need to make to be considered an official finisher of RAM, and that was really what we wanted to do. We wanted to be considered official finishers. Yeah, so within 24 hours, the first goal was gone. We had a pretty bad crash the very first night. I hit that yellow concrete pole there you can see on the left at about 55 kilometers an hour and crashed into that border station there. It was a difficult and awakening moment for me. But our crew was amazing. Patty did a great job of fixing me up, and not only fixing me up at the time, but also keeping me in good spirits and helping me get back on the road and get going again. And that was a real good test for our team. The second goal of finishing with the friendships intact, that was my broken wheel. If you'll see, it's got no spokes on the top, and that wheel broke when I crashed into the pole. I won't tell you what's behind the blacked out portion. I'll leave that to your imagination. But there were a few moments of tension, also combined with some humor behind them too. So we had a lot of fun and we laughed a little bit, and there were a few tense moments, as we expected there would be. I think I'm going to pass you over now to is Patty? Yeah. Patty's going to tell you a little bit about the crew and the navigation.
Hello, I'm Patty Lay. I was a member of the crew, and I'm probably the only one here that can easily correct Gord. He said that we had a psychotherapist from Port Hope on the team, but indeed, Caitlin is a physiotherapist in Port Hope. Maybe we need a psychotherapist now, but she was a physiotherapist. Of course, I'm Gord's wife, so I was asked to be on the crew, but I had a lot of misgivings. It was a big commitment. It was more than 2 weeks because we had to drive down there, drive across, drive home. We were in constant motion, intense togetherness. For us, there were no showers. We had to use public bathrooms only or outside. And we would be working through the evening and the night and sleeping, for me, at the kitchen table during the day shift. So I had a lot of anxiety because I thought I might get cranky and sleep deprived and yell at someone. I was really afraid I was going to make a navigational error, which would result in a significant time loss. But of course, my big fear was that there would be a serious accident, and being the nurse, I would have to deal with something in a remote area in the middle of the night. And I have to say, Sharon Warm-Spry and Brian Spry, who do a lot of outdoor things, they had these satellite phones which they lent to us. So a lot of places we were at, there was no cell phone service, and we were in remote areas. So this satellite phone was able to get help to us right away. I'm really happy we didn't need it, but that rested me a little bit. But I felt a big responsibility. But in spite of all these misgivings, I decided to give it a go. My day started at 3 p.m., and I would navigate the RV for 8 hours. The route was not plotted on a GPS. It was in a book that you see in front of you, and by the decimal point of a mile, it told us turn left, turn right. So you can see the GPS there. We set it to the miles per hour so that we would know at 34.9 we needed to go right, and then at 44.7 we needed to go left, and that took intense concentration. And in the RV, we had to connect. Our job in the RV was to connect the two vans with the riders with the RV that had the two resting riders in it every 4 hours for shift change. So we had to figure out where we could stop. And in addition to that, we had to do grocery shopping, laundry, empty the black water, fill up with clean water, and only the riders were allowed to use the bathroom and the shower, because otherwise if 11 people were using it, it would be completely overrun. So we had to go to a Walmart, or the nice thing about working at night was the whole world is your bathroom. So that was good. But nobody could have a shower, and it was tough. There's no question about it. And talking about exchanges, we estimated there were about 360 exchanges, and we had to do these quickly. And even if we had taken 30 more seconds per exchange, that calculates into about 5 extra hours. So it was critically important that the vehicles were all where they needed to be exactly when the riders were ready to exchange. So that was a big thing. Now, let me just see. The other thing was I worked for 8 hours in there, and then at 11 p.m. I took my 8-hour shift into one of the vans, and I drove behind the riders. I had to keep them in my headlights, not too quick, not too far, not too close. It took intense concentration again and all this coordination. And then in addition to that, as Steve said, I had to do his dressings when he wasn't riding and I wasn't driving. And it was very, very intense. I was quite relieved when he had the accident the first night, because I thought, okay, we got that out of the way. But of course, it's still, something bad still could have happened. In spite of all my misgivings, it was actually one of the most rewarding experiences of my life, because it was so engaging and challenging.
Hi, everyone. So I get to talk a little bit about sort of the fundraising for this event and what we did in particular or assisted with, and also a few more thank yous, right? So RAM has become a huge platform for racers to raise awareness for money and charities of their choice. In fact, racers have raised over $2 million per year for the past 5 years. Now, one team in particular that Gord knew is called Team Rams Polio Rotary. They actually raised over $1.2 million. They're from Austria, I believe. And we didn't quite do that, but we did. We rode and in support of the Northumberland United Way, and I believe at last count we've raised over $35,000 for the United Way, which we think is just fantastic. The level of support and the generosity of the donors that donated to that cause was just fantastic. Just let me see. In addition, and we've talked about some of these people, but we had other supporters and sponsors. The 11 is a bicycle shop that in Toronto that actually was tremendous for us. They supported us in terms of bicycle upgrades, bike maintenance. We used them a lot. We used to joke that it was like Christmas every day because we would be getting new bike supplies and new wheels and new this and new that. And as we got closer, they actually supplied about $5,000 worth of nutrition. So nutrition bars and powders and gels and everything you can imagine to support us through this event. So in addition, Coburg Honda was, we used both Gord and Patty's vans, so they actually helped us maintain those and get them ready for the long journey across the United States. And finally, we mentioned our coaches. Our jersey was designed by Gary Lee, and we had a lot of other people supporting us, especially during our, Steve mentioned our 24 and 36 hour training rides that we did in the spring, that they acted as crew for us during some of those events. So I think that's the end of my little part.
So goal number 3 was to finish within the cutoff time, and in fact, we finished under 7 days, 6 days, 20 hours, and 6 minutes. And that meant we won our division. We won actually the largest division in the race by age. We came about 2 hours ahead of the American team that were hot on our heels. It was interesting. I can remember the moment that we passed them for good because we'd been going back and forth right up until the Rockies. And then, what was the name of that pass that you took off? Wolf Creek Pass, which is the biggest pass. And I remember seeing Brad pass them, and then Brad handed off to me, and we never saw them again. But to Patty's point on the exchange, if our crew was not in sync and we just missed by 20 or 30 seconds, the American team would have been well ahead of us. We really ran a rather problem-free race, in terms of tactics. So we were very pleased with that. It was unexpected. It was interesting. Halfway through the race, we began to see where our competition was online, and that added a whole new dimension to what we were doing. So this is the plaque that we received. We came in first place in the 4-person male age 50 to 59 division, and we were quite pleased with that. And we actually beat teams of 8 who strategically should have been a lot faster than us. So I'll open it up for questions. These are some of the ones that are asked of us, but I don't know. Mayor Henderson, do you open it up for questions, or would you want me to just throw out the ones we have?
Well, I'll open it up to members of the council. They may have questions per what you have on the screen, or they may have some of their own. So I open it up to members of council if you have any. Councillor Chorley?
First of all, I'd like to congratulate you on what really appears to be a tremendous team effort and just a remarkable accomplishment.
Thank you.
I'm interested in the answer to all of these questions, but I'm also curious about whether there were other female competitors in the race as well.
Yes, there was. There was mixed teams, teams of 4. There was a mixed team of 4 women who, I think 10 years ago or so, had competed and won their division, and they came back 10 years later. They were now in their 60s, some 70s. And there was a lot of excitement about them finishing the race. Unfortunately, they got a little less than halfway, and due to injuries, they couldn't finish. And that was not uncommon. Particularly, most of the racers, if they drop out, are dropping out within the first 3 days, because you've got the mountains and the desert. The desert really takes its toll on riders. And we didn't go into a deep dive here, but it really did challenge us as riders as well. So yes, there were other female teams and female team members. That's right.
Other members of council? Deputy Mayor?
So now we're all exhausted, but thank you so much for coming tonight. Could you just briefly describe the process of transferring one rider to another rider?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah. So we were in teams. Brad West and I were one team, and Steve, Allan, and Gord Treasure were team number 2. And so what would happen is, if Brad is the first one out, Brad and I would be out in separate vans, okay, with our bikes on the van. And we usually had a backup bike as well. So Brad would be on the road, and he would ride for 30 minutes, which worked out to be about 10 miles away, depending on the terrain. So my van, with a driver and navigator, would scoot up the road where we think he would be within half an hour, and then we would wait for him. And then as he approached, I'd have my bike out, I'd be on my bike, and if it was a daylight, we would have a rolling pass. So as soon as I would start moving, and then as soon as he crossed my back wheel, then I would take off and I would sprint for half an hour. And then we would leapfrog and do that in a combination of 8 times. Then after that, we would meet up with Steve and Gord. Okay, so I would meet up with Steve first, and Steve would be ready to go, and then he would take off, Brad would come in, and then Gord would join in his van. So it was that constant leapfrog of teams of 2. Now, while the other 2 riders were riding, there'd be 2 of us. We would have our own bed. We would have a bed that we would share. So Brad and I became quite close friends over those 7 days. And then we would try to regenerate, eat and sleep, and have a quick shower, and then be ready to go in another 4 hours. So that was sort of the cycle.
And from my point of view, I guess I'm going to go to the last question for you, because this is pretty phenomenal. What's next for your group?
Well, I don't think we have as a group anything, but we're trying to get something organized. But individually, Steve and I are doing a race in April here in Ontario, and then I'm doing one in Spain in the fall, which is a mountain race. But other than that, nothing hardcore, nothing like this. And to answer your question, would we do it again? No. It's a once in a lifetime. Now, Brad has stated that if someone pays his way and looks after everything, he would consider doing it.
Councillor Burkett, you had a question?
Yeah. Do you know what percentage of teams finish the race?
Yeah, that's a good question too. So the teams have a higher finish ratio, and I'm not sure, but it's probably 70 to 80% of the teams do finish. But we have, for solo riders, which is a different kind of crazy altogether, I would say at least 30 to 35% do not finish the race. It's a difficult as a solo rider.
If there aren't any other questions, if you would bear with me, I'd like to call up Linda Kay, who, of course, we all know is the former CEO of the United Way. I also invited Bobby Jo Dawson because she helped me on this little project. And Nick, if you could come up. Nick was the silent sponsor helping me out with the town of Cobourg. So I'd like to do a little presentation to the 4 of you. I know you're not expecting this, but just something we felt from the town of Cobourg we could do collectively to say thank you for not just what you did, but also indirectly representing Cobourg. And Mr. Larmer, back to you for, over to you.
Next, Your Worship, we have reports. And first, we have General Government Services. First, we have the Committee of the Whole meeting notes held on Tuesday, February 18th, 2020.
The action recommended that Council receive the notes of the Committee of the Whole meeting held on Tuesday, February 18th, 2020 for information purposes.
Seconder. Councillor Burkett, discussion. All in favor? Carried.
Second item is a memo from the Interim Chief Administrative Officer regarding the Joint Fire Service Review for Northumberland County. The action recommended that Council receive the report from the Chief Administrative Officer of the Township of Hamilton for information purposes.
Seconder. Councillor Burrow, discussion. All in favor? Carried. Are there any direct questions at this point from the Chief? I know he's here for that purpose only. Okay, seeing none, Chief, enjoy your night. Mr. Larmer?
Next, Your Worship, we have motions, and first we have General Government Services.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. The first is a resolution regarding banking authorization for the Corporation of the Town of Cobourg and the Royal Bank of Canada. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Burrow, and it's fairly long. I will read it as it is in front of me. Resolved that the Royal Bank of Canada is appointed banker for the customer. 2, that signatures are required among the Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Treasurer are authorized to behalf of the customer from time to time. A, to withdraw or order transfers of funds from the customer's accounts by any means, including the making, drawing, accepting, endorsing, or signing of checks, promissory notes, bills of exchange, other orders for the payment of money or other instruments, or the giving of other instructions. B, to sign any agreements or other documents or instruments with or in favor of Royal Bank, including agreements and contracts related to products or services provided by the Royal Bank to the customer. And C, to do or to authorize any person or persons to do any one of more of the following. 1, to receive from Royal Bank any cash or securities, instruments, or other property of the customer held by the Royal Bank, whether for safekeeping or as security, or to give instructions to Royal Bank for the delivery or other transfer of any such cash, securities, instruments, or other property to any person named in those instructions. 2, to deposit with or negotiate or transfer to Royal Bank for the credit of the customer cash or any security, instrument, or other property, and for those purposes to endorse by rubber stamp or otherwise the name of the customer or any other name under which the customer carries on business or on any security or instrument. 3, to instruct Royal Bank by any means to debit the accounts of third parties for deposit to the credit of the customer. And 4, to receive statements, instruments, and other items, including paid checks and documents relating to the customer's account with or any service of Royal Bank, and to settle and certify the customer's accounts with the Royal Bank. 3, that all instruments, instructions, agreements, including contracts related to products or services provided by the Royal Bank, and documents made, drawn, accepted, endorsed, or signed under the corporate seal or otherwise, as provided in this resolution, and delivered to the Royal Bank by any person shall be valid and binding on the customer, and Royal Bank is hereby authorized to act on them and give effect to them. 4, that the Royal Bank be furnished with A, a copy of this resolution, and B, a list of the names of the persons authorized by this resolution to act on behalf of the customer, and with written notice of any changes which may take place in such list from time to time, and with specimens of the signatures of all persons. Each is certified by 1, the Mayor, 2, the Treasurer, and C, in writing any authorization made under paragraph 2C of this resolution. 5, that any document furnished to the Royal Bank as provided for in paragraph 4 of this resolution shall be binding upon the customer until a new document repealing or replacing the previous one has been received and duly acknowledged in writing by the branch or agency of the Royal Bank where the customer has its account. Certification, we hereby certify that the above is a true copy of a resolution passed at the meeting of council, customer duly convened and regularly held in accordance with the law governing the customer on 2020-0203.
Okay, thank you. Seconder? Councillor Barreau, any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Mr. Larmer?
Next, Your Worship, on our motions, we have Planning and Development Services, and we have the alternate coordinator, Councillor Aaron Burkett.
I have a motion moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Chorley, whereas the Committee of the Whole meeting on February 18th, 2020, Council considered a report from the Secretary of the Cobourg Heritage Advisory Committee regarding a heritage permit application, 5 King Street West, Cobourg. James Newsom, on behalf of Baxter Properties, 2692591, Ontario Limited, HP 2020-001. Now therefore be resolved that Council endorse the recommendations of the Heritage Advisory Committee and grant a heritage permit HP 2020-001 to permit Option 1, cast in place concrete sandstone facade improvement reconstruction for the property known municipally as 5 King Street West, Cobourg, subject to finalization of details with planning staff.
Discussion? All in favor? Carried. Mr. Larmer?
Next, Your Worship, we have Public Works Services on our motions, and we have alternate coordinator, Councillor Burkett.
I have a motion moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Chorley, whereas the Committee of the Whole meeting on February 18th, 2020, Council considered a memo from the Director of Public Works regarding the award of the Kerr Street and Midtown Creek Flood Reduction Pond tender CO-19-28 DPW. Now therefore be resolved that Council award the Kerr Street and Midtown Creek Flood Reduction Tender to Bain Construction Limited in the amount of $6,563,720.91, including non-refundable taxes.
Discussion? All in favor? Carried. Mr. Larmer?
Next, Your Worship, Arts, Culture, and Tourism Services.
Motion from the Committee of the Whole regarding the proposed Memorandum of Understanding MOU between the Town of Cobourg and the Cobourg Public Library. Whereas the Committee of the Whole, now therefore be resolved, Council instructs staff to draft a Memorandum of Understanding MOU to clearly define the roles and responsibilities and relationship between the Town of Cobourg and the Cobourg Public Library Board. And further that the Council Coordinator of Arts, Culture, and Tourism, Deputy Mayor Sagan, Interim CAO, Municipal Clerk, and the CAO and Chair of the Cobourg Public Library Board be present during the discussions between the Town of Cobourg and the Cobourg Public Library Board when drafting the terms of the MOU. And further that the MOU be finalized by June 1st, 2020 and brought to the Cobourg Public Library Board for approval prior to the MOU being presented to Council for final approval.
Councillor Barreau, I apologize. Did you have a mover and seconder on that?
Oh, I did. Sorry. Moved by myself and seconded by Deputy Mayor Sagan.
Okay, thank you for that. Discussion? All in favor? Carried. Mr. Larmer?
Next, Your Worship, we have the bylaws, and we have General Government Services.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. The first is Bylaw 011-2020, being a bylaw to provide for the classification, retention, and destruction of records for the Corporation of the Town of Cobourg, to establish a records management policy and to delegate authority to the Municipal Clerk to establish or amend retention periods. The action recommended that Council adopt Bylaw 011-2020, being a bylaw to provide for the classification, retention, and destruction of records for the Corporation of the Town of Cobourg, to establish a records management policy and to delegate authority to the Municipal Clerk to establish or amend retention periods.
Seconder? Councillor Barreau, discussion? All in favor? Carried.
The second is a bylaw 012-2020, being a bylaw to appoint an interim chief administrative officer, CAO, for the corporation of the town of Cobourg. The action recommended that council adopt bylaw 012-2020, being a bylaw to appoint Ian Davey as interim chief administrative officer for the corporation of the town of Cobourg, effective date of passing, which is today, February the 24th, and date of expiry being November 30th, 2020.
Seconder. Councillor Barreau, discussion. All in favor? Carried. Mr. Larmer.
Next, Your Worship, under bylaws, we have Planning and Development Services, and we have alternate coordinator, Councillor Burkett.
I have a bylaw 013-2020, being a bylaw to authorize execution of a subdivision agreement with Jana Ewert, Lakefront Utility Services, Inc., and the Corporation of the Town of Cobourg, 271 Clyde Street, Cobourg. The action recommend that council adopt a bylaw 013-2020, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the municipal clerk to execute a subdivision agreement with Jana Ewert and Lakefront Utility Services, Inc., and the Town of Cobourg for development of 4 residential lots on property known municipally as 271 Clyde Street, Cobourg.
Seconder. Councillor Barreau, discussion. All in favor? Carried. Mr. Larmer.
His next, Your Worship, under bylaws, we have Public Works Services, and we have Council alternate coordinator, Councillor Burkett.
Bylaw 014-2020, being a bylaw to repeal bylaw number 095-2019, establishing an agreement with BTS Network, Inc., to provide extended accessible transit services in the town of Cobourg. Action recommended that council adopt bylaw 014-2020, being a bylaw to repeal bylaw number 095-2019, establishing an agreement with BTS Networks, Inc., to provide extended accessible transit services in the town of Cobourg.
Seconder. Councillor Barreau, discussion. All in favor? Carried. Mr. Larmer.
Next, Your Worship, Protection Services under bylaws.
I have a bylaw 015-2020, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 014-2014 to license, regulate, and govern taxi cab owners and drivers within the town of Cobourg. Action recommended that council adopt bylaw 015-2020, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 014-2014, being a bylaw to license, regulate, and govern taxi cab owners and drivers within the town of Cobourg to replace Schedule B tariffs in order to incorporate the new fares as approved by council on January 27th, 2020.
Seconder. Councillor Barreau, discussion. All in favor? Carried. Mr. Larmer.
That the following bylaws be passed. 1. 011-2020, being a bylaw to provide for the classification, retention, and destruction of records for the corporation of the town of Cobourg, to establish a records management policy, and to delegate authority to the municipal clerk to establish or amend retention periods. 2. Bylaw 012-2020, being a bylaw to appoint an interim chief administrative officer for the corporation of the town of Cobourg. 3. Bylaw 013-2020, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a subdivision agreement with Jana Ewert, Lakefront Utility Services, Inc., and the corporation of the town of Cobourg, 271 Clyde Street, Cobourg. 4. Bylaw 014-2020, being a bylaw to repeal bylaw 095-2019, establish an agreement with BTS Network, Inc., to provide extended accessible transit services in the town of Cobourg. And 5. Bylaw 015-2020, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2014 to license, regulate, and govern taxi cab owners and drivers within the town of Cobourg. The action recommended that leave be granted to introduce bylaws 011-2020, 2015-2020, and to dispense with the reading of the bylaws by the municipal clerk, and that same be considered read and passed, and that the mayor and the municipal clerk sign the same, and the seal of corporation be thereto affixed.
Seconder, Councillor Burkett, discussion. All in favor? Carried. Mr. Larm.
Next, Your Worship, we have the committee, advisory committee board minutes for information purposes.
Seconder, Councillor Burrow, all in favor? Carried. Mr. Larmer.
Next, Your Worship, we have correspondence. And first, we have correspondence from Pine Ridge Art Association requesting a one-time exemption on sales restrictions at the Market Building under the tenant vendor bylaw. And this is a protection services correspondence.
Councillor Burkett.
Action recommended that council receive the correspondence for information purposes.
Seconder. Councillor Burrow, discussion. All in favor? Carried.
Next, Your Worship, we have correspondence from Dennis Nesvesco on the removal of unfinished business item 1126-18, which was a memo from John Ewer, Town of Cobourg Municipal Ombudsman, regarding a Town of Cobourg Ombudsman Complaint 1-2018, and this is a general government services item.
Deputy Mayor.
The action recommended that council receive the correspondence for information purposes.
Seconder. Councillor Burrow, discussion. Councillor Chorley.
Thank you. Just a question through to the clerk. I understand that the former Town of Cobourg Ombudsman was not able to reply to a question from a member of council, which is why this item was on the unfinished business section of the agenda. I'm just wondering, in terms of process, if this was to be added back onto the unfinished business section, but we no longer have that ombudsman available to answer the question posed by a member of the previous council. How would that work? What would council's options be for addressing that issue?
Mr. Larmer.
So through you, Your Worship, to members of the council. So the unfinished business item appeared on council's agenda on November 26, 2018, in the previous term of council. Council received a municipal ombudsman response to a complaint that was issued back in the prior May 3rd in 2018. At that time, council received a full report by the municipally appointed ombudsman, John Ewert, and was provided recommendations based on that report. Council as a whole provided directions on November 26, 2018, regarding clarification of Mr. Ewert's processes, findings, and recommendations based on his analysis of the investigation. And this was pursuant to the Ombudsman investigation policy that Council had at the time with the Municipal Ombudsman, as well as the Municipal Act, as well as the Ombudsman Act. And this was referred to the municipally appointed Ombudsman to bring back recommendations, clarifications, and reports to the newly elected Municipal Council for consideration. With the passing of that direction from council, not just one individual council member was forwarded to that time Municipal Ombudsman John Ewert, and to date there was no response based on that report. So back in 2019, the process started to appoint to put an RFP for recruitment of a Municipal Ombudsman, and back this year, late, I believe November, we appointed the Provincial Ombudsman. Council did not we, based on the RFP results and recommendation from staff and approval from Council. At that time, I myself, as clerk, removed that unfinished business item because we no longer have the services of our Municipal Ombudsman. Council is elected to go to the Provincial Ombudsman for that process. And that's the reason we did that. Mr. Ewert no longer is employed by the Town of Cobourg for Municipal Ombudsman services, so if a complaint wanted to come forward by any resident of Cobourg or any member of council or staff or citizen, would have to be forwarded by the Provincial Ombudsman to do an investigation for that purposes. Part of that response from the Municipal Ombudsman staff and the Legislative Services Department took took the recommendations even though council didn't act on them, and in 2019 presented the new council with the terms of reference bylaw, which is 006-2019, and we incorporated some very transparent section of that act which allowed for right into the actual bylaw requirements for ad hoc committees, advisory committees, to being totally open to the public, as well as a generic section within that terms of reference to actually have all meetings that are providing recommendations to council or that FART would be an open session for that anything that had to do with actions being presented to council. So staff on our level were happy that we've provided in the terms of reference that provision that anything that comes to those public meetings or with staff or appointed volunteers from council would be open to the public, and that's right in our terms of reference bylaw. So we took those measures internally with the new council to make sure they're in bylaw.
Does that help? Or do you have a subsequent question?
Thank you. No, that does help. And it is unfortunate that this issue has been left open-ended, but I am struggling to see a way to resolve the issue or get the answers to the questions posed by the previous council now that the Ombudsman is no longer employed by the town of Cobourg. And I do appreciate that the clerk has made clear that some changes were made to our terms of reference bylaw to try and make it clear that all steering committee meetings should be open to the public. So thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions from members of council? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Mr. Larmer?
Next, Your Worship, we have correspondence number 3, and this is correspondence from the Ministry of the Solicitor General regarding the Emergency Management Civil Protection Act 2019 compliance report results that were submitted by the Town of Cobourg Emergency Planner and through the Fire Department and the Protection Services.
Councillor Burkett.
The council received the correspondence for information purposes.
Seconder. Councillor Barreau, discussion. All in favor? Carried. Mr. Larmer.
Next, Your Worship, we have correspondence number 4, and we have correspondence which is the mini release from the Cobourg Police Services regarding the extra visibility in downtown area, and this is Protection Services.
Councillor Burkett.
The action recommended that council receive the correspondence for information purposes.
Seconder. Councillor Barreau, discussion. All in favor? Carried. Mr. Larmer.
Next, Your Worship, we have the council coordinator announcements.
Okay, thank you. I have a few. First of all, I'd like to stress that we did postpone the opioid summit. That was a collective decision by the internal subcommittee. However, it went out as a council directive because it was dealing with a council motion. But I'd like to be absolutely clear to everyone. I, as mayor, had to weigh the pros and cons of that situation. And I had to concur that we did not have our organizational community groups ready and fully ready to present in an integrated forum. And based on that, I made the decision to postpone the summit with the understanding that it would continue, and we needed and required more time to work with our 11+ agencies that we're working with to put on a unified message that what we're attempting to do together, because it really is cross-divisional with a key focus. So I want to ensure you that it's still going to take place, and we're working on that as we speak with all our various groups. In terms of BMO, they did not have a grand opening, but I did attend the night that they opened up their new offices. Simply unbelievable. It shows what you can do with an old building. They really did the building from the beginning to the streetscape, which is the old Hell Shop on King Street, and it goes right to the very back. In fact, it's inclusive of what used to be a 2-car garage. So if you have an opportunity as council to see the work and the commitment under Karen Chelovich, it's simply amazing. It to me is a model of what can be done in an old heritage building, the blending of the two worlds. County Council, you may have heard we went back for 8 additional hours in budget. At the end of that, we were able to lower the budget from 3.0% to back to 2.61%. Probably the most outstanding issue of the 140 million plus budget does surround the issue of garbage tags. So yes, I can confirm that garbage tags are going to go up $1 in value. And if you'd like to have that discussion and further, please give me a call or email jhenderson@coburg.ca. I'd be happy to explain the rationale behind that decision. The Board of Health, of which I'm a member, I'm pleased to note that the board had faith in me to appoint me as deputy chair in this next term. I look forward to that responsibility, but I'm also pleased to tell everyone at this point in time, from Dr. Noseworthy, who is our medical officer of health, at this point we do not have any confirmed or noted cases within Northumberland. The team collectively is being very proactive on a continuous basis with a number of organizations, including schools and the like. I'd like to congratulate the police under Chief Vandegraff and his staff for putting together the Police Accelerator. They contribute money, as did Venture 13 through CFDC, Wendy Curtis, and Community Futures Development Corporation, but so did the Southern Economic Development Office from the federal government, who threw in an additional $100,000. I'm looking forward to what we can do both in creativity and innovation through, again, the chief, as we handle new issues in policing. Similarly, good news for Venture 13 and CFDC, again, the town of Coburg and working with TELUS. We're forming a partnership so TELUS can help us to come in with the Internet of Things, 5G technologies, perhaps exploring how to bring 5G technologies to a youth Northumberland Makers Lab. They're also offering their services to youth and entrepreneurs. And again, this is just another step forward in the new world of innovation. And I'd very much like to thank TELUS for stepping forward. It probably will be mentioned elsewhere, but somewhere in the county. As you may know, in the county, we were the first of 24 health centers in Ontario to be recognized. We're now known as the Northumberland Ontario Health Team. As that's being put together, one of the key focuses, one of the three, was to focus on paramedicine. In other words, what can we do in a non-emergency to service those in particular in rural areas? And I'm pleased to say that many members of council were there yesterday when Mr. Piccini gave an announcement of $300,000 to Northumberland County to start this venture this year. So very exciting news for us. I also like to remind you that CEO process continues and the RFP closes, and we look forward to those submissions on February the 28th. The Living Well Integrated Center is going to reopen, and for those that may be interested, it's February 29th, starting at 3 p.m., and of course that site is on Spring Street. Similarly, we have the Coburg District Hall of Fame induction notice of names. It's scheduled for March the 1st at 2 p.m. at the CCC. We have many other wonderful dates coming up as well. And on March the 5th, we have the Cornerstone International Women's Luncheon. And I know many members of council are very supportive of attending that luncheon for certainly a great purpose. And of course, on March 6th, we do look forward to the Business Achievement Awards, and I know that's a night that many colleagues and members of council attend to support the various business, not only in Coburg, Northumberland, Hampton Township, but also Alnwick, Haldeman as well. That is my report, and I'll pass it over to Deputy Mayor.
Can I get away with just saying ditto? Probably not, eh? Just a few similar attendance. This February, I attended a few council and community events, including the paramedicine grant announcement of $340,000 by MPP Bacini, the strategic alliance announcement with TELUS at Venture 13, which will provide this centre with additional membership, accelerated perks, as you mentioned, Your Worship, membership programming opportunities, and new hardware for the Maker Lab, and the announcement of the Venture 13 Police Tech Accelerator in partnership with the Cobourg Police Services and Northumberland Community Futures Development Corporation. I also attended 2 days of budget deliberations, which I found really interesting. You would think after our budget process that would be enough, but I really enjoyed it, and I really would like to thank you as a member of the County Council for bringing this forward and giving the public the opportunity to hear the county councillors discuss and finally approve that county budget for 2020 at 2.61. I learned a lot, brought home a lot of notes, and as I mentioned, a considerable portion of our taxes here in Cobourg is paid to Northumberland County, so we as residents, we should be more familiar with where our money is spent on. And there was a good discussion on the increase to the garbage tags, and a lot of good reflective discussion, and the garbage tags haven't been raised since 2007. So people were on both sides of that, and I think it ended up being a good discussion, and eventually did pass. And it takes effect March 1st, 2020. This past Saturday, I attended, along with the Mayor, Councillor Bureau, and DBIA Chair Joan Greaves, the 20th anniversary celebration of All Creatures Cobourg. Congratulations to owners Teresa Rickaby and Heather Harrelson Glennie for their continued success. Two women that have worked extremely hard to maintain not only one but two businesses downtown. On February 27th, on behalf of the Mayor and Council, I will be attending the YMCA Seniors Information and Active Living Fair. And our next general government meeting is March 4th. Bring forward several ongoing policy changes there. And as you mentioned, Your Worship, the Northumberland Chamber of Commerce and the Town of Cobourg are pleased to once again co-host the 2019 Business Achievement Awards on March 6th at 6 p.m. at the Best Western. The awards recognize excellence and honor high achievers in the local business community. Gala attendees can look forward to mixing and mingling during cocktails, enjoying the entertainment, and a delicious multi-course meal, leisurely served during the awards ceremony. I've been there several years, and it is an amazing night. With pride, we look forward to honoring all of the nominees and celebrating the winners of the 2019 Business Achievement Awards. And announced today, congratulations to Gary Lieberon of Century 21 All Pro Realty, 1993 Limited, as the recipient of this year's James Crossan Lifetime Achievement Award. So congratulations, Gary, and we look forward. You can learn an awful lot about local businesses by going to this event, and I know several of us will be there. And that's my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And from that, we do have Councillor Beattie and Darlene absent at this point, so I'll go directly to Councillor Chorley.
Thank you, Mayor Henderson. Regarding recreation, registration for the March break kids camp, and that takes place at the CCC, that's filling up quickly. So you can get in touch with CCC staff if you're interested in registering your child for camp, or you can register your child online. The Cobourg Seniors Activity Centre has an interesting lineup for the Hello Wellness Lunch and Learn series, which is held from 12 noon till 2 p.m. and includes a complimentary lunch. So upcoming dates include February 27th, which is on home safety, March 11th, diabetes information and support, March 18th is an information session on shingles, and March 24th, emergency planning at home, and finally March 25th, blood pressure education. Registration can be completed by calling the CCC or dropping by in person, or you can email cccinfo@cobourg.ca to register. Regarding waterfront operations, at the Cobourg Marina, the online reservation system will be open on Wednesday, April 1st, 2020. And just to let members of the public know that staff are working on the RFP for the electrical upgrade at the Marina, which will be issued shortly. And that the aim is certainly to get the upgrade completed as soon as possible and that will help increase the marina's resilience to high lake levels. The park's greenhouse production is underway for the summer floral displays, and I would encourage everyone to mark this date in their calendar, which is May 9th, 2020. That's when there will be an open house at the town's greenhouse, which is one of my favorite events of the year. So everyone should try to make that one. Regarding the beach canteen in Victoria Park, staff have issued an RFP for the operation of the Victoria Park Beach Canteen. There will be a mandatory proponents meeting held at 10 a.m. on March 3rd. That will take place at the canteen, and the RFP will close on March the 10th. I encourage anyone who's interested in operating the canteen to visit the town's bids and tenders webpage for more information, and certainly spread the word to anyone who might be interested in operating the canteen in the community. Regarding the East Pier project, the RFP for design and engineering services for the East Pier was issued on February 21st, and that will close on March the 10th. This is being put together by staff from the Community Services Division, along with input from our Public Works Department. And separate RFPs for the campground reconfiguration and development, as well as the harbor infrastructure and breakwater project, will be issued shortly. And that's everything from Parks and Rec.
Okay, a lot of RFPs, which is great news. Councillor Burkett.
I'm going to start with building stats, and these are the stats issued for leading up to the end of January. So we had 18 permits issued with 7 new dwelling units with an estimated construction value of $2.025 million, with revenues of $30,213. The year-to-date stats, including the non-building permits, is a total shows of 26. In fire, incidents year-to-date are at 231. Training activities or sessions year-to-date are at 67. Prevention activities year-to-date are 61. Just a reminder to the public and anyone that wishes to have a chat with our Chief of Police, he invites everyone to join him for coffee with the Chief on March 4th at the Dutch Oven, which is 7 King Street West, Coburg, from 5 to 7:30 p.m. In planning, the first phase of the affordable and rental housing community improvement plan process is complete, which included a public launch event in December, multimedia communications, dedicated Engage Coburg website, and surveys, stakeholders, meetings, a community open house workshop, a council update, and an 8-week public consultation period. The consulting team is finalizing a background report and will bring drafting the CIP over the next month, with further stakeholder consultations planned for the next open house public meeting scheduled for April. The recently vacant senior planner position of development has been posted, and we hope to have the replacement found in the next few weeks. In Heritage, the owners of the Certo building have retained a professional engineer and will be commencing work early March pursuant to the property standards order to remove the building's roof and HVAC units due to severe instability and risks of collapsing. The south gable and Parnat wall and the side walls will be protected and stabilized during the work to ensure the structural integrity of the building is maintained. The roof will be temporarily tarped for protection over the winter until the time for full restoration can be implemented via a comprehensive restoration plan. which is currently underway and will be submitted to the Cobourg or the town of Cobourg in the spring. All the work is being overseen by owner's structural engineer. The CHC has been apprised of the situation, and planning and heritage staff will be consulting with the CHC and council once the proposed restoration plan is submitted. So that's great news. And that's my report.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Burrell.
Good night. Tonight I'm going to start with the Cobourg Public Library. Good night. I know. They're looking for garden volunteers. They're looking for people to get their hands dirty. They need help with maintaining, watering, weeding, and planting programs for the library garden. If you're a green thumb or interested in helping, contact Rachel Spence at the Cobourg Public Library. The 2020 Waterfront Festival will take place from Wednesday, July 1st to Saturday, July 4th. Other community events, March 4th is Ron James Full Throttle at the Concert Hall. March 8th is Stevie Ray Vaughan Tribute Band at the Concert Hall. March 14th is Surf and Safari Ultimate Beach Party Show, and that'll also be, I believe, at the Concert Hall. This year I did attend the DBIA pub crawl, and I think it was a great success. I attended a lot of the bars, pubs, and restaurants that were participating, and it was busy everywhere we went. It was really good. So a big shout out to the Downtown Business Improvement Area Coordinator, Tracy LaFleche, and the DBIA board. Job well done, for sure. I also want to pay a little tribute to a citizen that we did lose this year. Her name's Victoria Johnson. Vicky was born in Montreal and moved with her family to Toronto in the early 1960s. She was a Special Olympian and in the 1986 attended the Calgary Special Olympics, where she competed in bowling and bringing home an assortment of medals and trophies. And in 1993, Vicky moved to Cobourg with her parents, and Vicky had an active life, working for Beyond the Blue Box for over 20 years and at the Twice as Nice consignment store on King Street. Her services on Saturday, February 29th at 2 p.m. at McCoubrey's Funeral Home, and if you'll never feel a hug again like a Vicky hug, I'll tell you. And that is my report.
Okay, thank you for that. That's it. Mr. Lummer, over to you.
Yes, next, Your Worship, we have the unfinished business items listed in the agenda. If there's any comments for that, then we have the confirmatory bylaw.
If I may, I know I'd come back to council, but I'm still having some difficulty clearly communicating with Northumberland County on getting dates when staff are available because of their not availability at this point. So I know I have to bring those dates back to you. I will certainly do when I can have the conversations with the right director and managers in place. So I have not forgotten about that. With that being said, I believe we're at confirmatory bylaw. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Bylaw 016-2020 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting of February 24th, 2020. The action recommended that leave be granted to introduce bylaw 016-2020 and to dispense with the readings of the bylaw by the municipal clerk to confirm the proceedings of the council of the town of Cobourg at its regular meeting held on February 24th, 2020. And that same be considered read and passed, and that the mayor and the municipal clerk sign the same and the seal of corporation be thereto affixed.
Seconder. Councillor Barreau. Discussion. All in favor? Carried. Call for adjournment. Councillor Barreau.